everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 20 of Berserk. Nothing major happened last episode. Griffith just freaked the hell out because Guts is left. Guts just thinks he can just walk away, and he's like, well, I'm off to find my purpose. You guys will be fine, right? Right? I was talking to my brother the other night because he constantly asks where I'm at in Berserk. And so he was like, where are you at? And I was like, I told him the events of episode 19. And he was just sitting there with the biggest, like, shit-eating grin on his face. Like, And I was like, I know you're not going to spoil me because you're a nice brother, but what are you thinking? And he goes, you know that episode of The Simpsons where there's the kid on the back of the bus that's like, I'm in danger. He looked at me and goes, you're in danger. And I went, what? And he went, that's all I'm saying. And I was like, oh no. So I'm in danger, apparently. We've got 6 episodes to go before 6 episodes to go, y'all, before I start this. I have ordered the very first volume of the manga. I've not touched it. I've not opened it. But I've done a few little things around my office space here. I know, office space, as I have a giant poster of Free behind me. I've done a few modifications, some things I'm really excited about. I've had people ask me if I would do like a tour of this space and to show you all what's on the shelves and stuff. I would like to do that. I think I'm going to do that this fall when I'm on break and just kind of show you all. But I've been trying to like revamp everything before that point because it's kind of a mess. But I do have a little stand that I've gotten. And I've got this first volume here, and I've got a camera I'm going to be checking out and messing with over holiday break. So I'm really excited. I'm going to be ready to start the manga proper. So that's going to be exciting. But for now, it's this heavy defense device that this manga volume is going to sit over here off screen until I'm ready to dive into it. So that's really exciting. Yay. But yeah, we've still got a ways to go before we even crack that sucker open. So with that being said, I've got 3 comments that I want to talk about before we start this episode. I want to talk about Quarrel-don. Quarrel-don talked about the opposite of love being indifference. And I really like that because I've seen that, you know, we talk about Attack on Titan, we talk about Vinland Saga being influenced by Berserk. I can clearly see that having watched those series. You can see the influence very well. But I like the idea, the opposite of love is indifference. And you kind of have that with Griffith, with Charlotte. Griffith and Charlotte, he really is indifferent to her. He's just using her, you know, especially in the last episode to placate an emotion that he's having. And then you have, you know, take that versus Casca and Guts to Griffith. You know, Griffith, I feel very bad for Casca in a lot of ways because she clearly is fiercely loyal to Griffith and had feelings for him, but recognized very quickly those feelings were unrequited. And she was like, well, what do I do with that? And now, just as she's realizing that maybe she has feelings for Guts, he decides to leave. And she's like, well, what am I supposed to do with all of this? Meanwhile, Guts is like oblivious to the feelings these other people have for him. He's just like, well, we're friends, but you guys understand, right? And it's like, it's not that simple, you know? So where does Guts fall in this? And I think that's a big question. And I feel obviously the manga is very ongoing. I feel as if this is not the last time Guts will have seen Casca or Griffith, obviously, but we've got to get to that point, right? CR talks about Casca in episode 16 being described as Griffith's sword. He described them as such in their comment. And I thought that was really interesting because whenever Griffith is facing Guts in the last episode, Guts immediately slices through Griffith's real sword. But at the same time he slices through the real sword, you have Casca, who is Griffith's metaphorical sword, questioning whether she really totally is loyal to Griffith or whether she also has feelings for Guts. So I feel like there's a lot of wavering, and that was symbolically and literally represented in the last episode, which is fun. And then Reptov 1954, this was just something very random and fun, but I watched wrestling as a kid. My dad and I, on Monday nights, it'd be like football season, and then when football season was over, we would watch WCW and WWE wrestling because I was that kid. And so I loved Reptov's comment about in episode 17, Corcus's pose is based on Hulk Hogan's during the parade when they're coming back from the battle. And I was like, oh that's fun. Corcus being tied to Hulk Hogan somehow makes all the sense. And unless you've watched wrestling, that will mean nothing to you. But if you've watched American wrestling, you'll be like, oh, yeah, makes sense. But yeah, so I thought those comments were really good. I really appreciated them. I want to give, I've not been doing this because I've been recording ahead, but y'all are almost caught up with me now as I'm recording this, so I feel like I'm comfortable doing this. But I want to give a very big shout out over to Patreon and to the philanthropy tier. I've not done this all series because I've been recording so far ahead, but now y'all are catching up to me, so I feel like I can do this. But thank you to these individuals because the Berserk Deluxe editions are expensive. Luckily, I found them on sale through a retailer, so they weren't as expensive as they normally are. But getting the stand to do the manga, getting the camera that I'm planning to use to record them, and then getting the volumes themselves, they are not cheap. And in order to do that, I kind of have to dip into Patreon funds. And to put the reactions up, I dip into Patreon funds. So I really, really am appreciative that you all, support me and you find my long-winded ramblings about Berserk interesting as you're cleaning your house, as you're driving to work, as you're going on a long road trip. I'm glad that you've chosen to spend time listening to my ramblings because I absolutely love this series so much and it's so wonderful. And I look forward to every episode that I get to watch. And I have a feeling I'm going to be really looking forward to the manga. So these philanthropy tier members go above and beyond each week to support me. So thank you so much. Special thanks. And I had to update my list here. To Alex Cornejo, to Anime Annie, to Anna, to Ashy Got Snow Bitches, to Be Happy, to Dana, to Destiny Marie, to Edgar, to Eric, to Kiri, to Loisje, however you pronounce that, to Matthew Palfinier, to Nameless Monster, to Saku, to Shimoyama, to Sunspots, to Trails, to Translucent Men, to Tyrone, and to Zakiel. Thank you all so very much. I am honestly amazed by the support and so grateful. And you all know that you all have all of my love. Yeah. So I'm really appreciative of that. Thank you all very much. But at this point, Griffith's been taken into custody. I don't know what, we still have the eclipse that's on its way. Maybe the eclipse with the demon is gonna, the demon supposedly showing up is gonna happen right as Griffith is being tried for his indecency. Maybe the trial is gonna happen and then the eclipse is gonna happen and all the demons are gonna show up and Guts is gonna be like, what? Huh? Or maybe Corcus and probably not Corcus, but maybe Judo and all them are gonna go find Guts and be like, Griffith's been taken into custody. And Guts is like, I leave you all for 5 seconds and it all goes to shit. I don't know. I'm very curious to see what all we're gonna get this episode and how it's gonna go down. I don't know. There's a lot of possibilities, but we're just gonna have to wait and see, right? So we're not gonna waste any more time. We're gonna dive into Berserk episode 20, and we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Well, that was, again, unexpected. I absolutely love that Berserk completely subverts my expectations of, at this point, where I think the episodes are going to go. Because now that we don't have any major battles or wars that we're fighting, it's kind of like, well, what is the show going to do? And I will be honest, this episode definitely felt with there being this year gap of what Guts has been doing and what Griffith and the crew have been doing. With that all in place, it definitely feels like there's probably some manga content that has been left out of this episode for the sake of streamlining it. I'm sure they took out when Guts met Godot, when he met Erica. I'm sure that all of that has been streamlined for the sake of making this a concise episode. And it was a concise episode. I have no complaints about the episode and its content, but I just got that feeling that you get sometimes when you're watching an adaptation being like, I bet there's probably more to the source material than this. And that's what I got. So I don't really want to know whether that's the case or not. I'd rather find out in the manga if that's the case. So we'll just see when we get to it if there's been things left out or that were altered or kind of condensed or streamlined. I'm fine with that. I feel like when I watch an anime, it's better that I see it in this form first. If I had read the manga first and then came back and watched this and saw that it was cut out or streamlined, I'd probably be more upset. Whereas I feel like if I watch an anime and it's streamlined and then I go back and see the manga, I get a better appreciation of the manga through it. So I'm fine with that. But I could understand if people get mad when things are cut out, because how could you not? Especially when it's a series like this and you want to see it adapted, right? So, but this episode, wow. So I guess we probably need to address like some of the elephants in the room in terms of things that I was like, wait, oh, it's been a year. So it's been 1 year. We've had a year gap. Not many of the characters look any different, which it's only been a year. They're probably not going to change that much, except Griffith's hair. I just imagine him in the dungeon. His hair is like down to the floor and he looks like a big owl. He looks like Hal from Howl's Moving Castle, where he's like covered in feathers. Like I'm waiting for that, honestly. But in this year gap, Griffith has been imprisoned. Griffith has been imprisoned in a dungeon, which is honestly very intriguing to me. I did not see that coming. Did not see it coming that Griffith would be imprisoned in a dungeon. I imagined that there would be a trial. I imagined that there would be all of this stuff going on, that the king, that I felt like things would have to happen much quicker, that the Band of the Hawk, if they were going to retaliate and rescue Griffith, would have to do so very quickly in order for Griffith to be saved. But no, I feel like in some regard, the king probably took pity on Griffith because he's been so loyal and it was so integral to them winning the war. The king seems like the type of person, the king does not seem like the type of person that would sentence Griffith to death. That's the thing. He seems like the type of person to be like, well, I'm not going to kill you because you did rescue our kingdom and were a major part of the war being won. However, because you slept with my daughter and did so very inappropriately, I'm going to imprison you in a dungeon and let you think about the consequences of your actions. It's like a kind of a Cersei move from Game of Thrones without the malice, right? So Griffith's in prison, and supposedly he's been like moaning and screaming, moaning and sad, but now has gone silent, like he's given up. What a time for Guts to show up right when he's given up, right? I've got some thoughts about Griffith in this whole situation, but we'll wait till we get into the episode to kind of talk about them. But he's been imprisoned in this dungeon. Meanwhile, Casca and the Band of the Hawk had led a revolt, obviously, to probably try to rescue Griffith, and then went on the run. And they are not doing great. They are not doing great. I like that Judo, I feel like Judo has kind of become the mediator between Casca and Guts. And Judo, do I think Judo is gay? No. But do I think he kind of functions as like the gay best friend that's just like, hey, I'm not attracted to you at all, but I know who is, and I'd like to be a matchmaker. It's that very stereotypical trope that you see a lot of times in narratives, and I feel like Judo kind of fits into that narrative a bit, into that trope. But Judo is kind of like the caretaker, which he's kind of been all along to all the characters. He's been that way to Guts whenever Guts was getting advice about talking to Griffith for the first time. That's been Judo. Judo's been there to like try to guide Guts and Casca along. He's been kind of this mediator. So Judo has kind of been looking over Casca, and he seems very hopeful. He tries to maintain some hope, even though he can clearly see that she has run ragged, right? Then you have Corcus, who Corcus is very much, he's still loyal, but distant, I guess is the best way to put it. Because Judo and Rickard are like, why are you still here? Why didn't you desert? And I feel like Corcus is still very much a coward. He knows he can't make it on his own. So Corcus is like, I know I can't just desert the group and make it on my own, so I need to stay with the group for stability and some form of reliance. But at the same time, he very much, he's only there because it's the best option. Corcus, as we've established in the series, it only does things for himself because they're the most viable option. At this point, him going on his own is not feasible. So he's like, I'm going to stick with this group because it seems most viable, but I don't like it, you know? So we have that. And then we'll talk about Guts here in a second. Old Guts, featuring Godot and Erica, right? I liked their characters a lot in this. I'm hoping the manga gives us more with them, so that'll be fun when we get to it. But just off here in the sideline, the eclipse. The eclipse has not happened yet. I honestly, it didn't hit me until this episode because I had been assuming, like the feeble mortal that I am, that I was like, oh, well, he said, you know, Zod said the eclipse was coming soon. That must mean like in the next week or so. But if you've been living for hundreds and hundreds of years, coming soon can mean a lot of things. Coming soon can mean a decade. Coming soon can mean a year or two. Coming soon can mean 2 years. It did not hit me until this episode that I was like, oh, when Zod says it's coming soon, he could very well mean like within a year. Do I think the eclipse is coming soon? Yes, I do. I think that the timing of all of this is going to be very interesting. Here's my thing, and I might as well talk about it before we get into this episode proper, because there's a lot of philosophical things about Guts and his dream and what he's trying to do, you know, in terms of finding his purpose. I am going to be very curious because I feel as if Griffith holds grudges. I'm just going to throw that out there. I feel like he does. I feel like Griffith holds grudges, and I only say that because when the governor was challenged on the battlefield by Griffith, Griffith very much seemed indifferent, and he was like, oh, I don't care about you, whatever. But let's be real. He very much was wanting that man to die and had no qualms with watching him like slowly suffer and die, right? Is Griffith going to be very upset that Guts left him for a year and it took a year for him to come back? And he probably only came back because, let's be real, he only came back because he saw that Casca was in danger. He only went out to, here's the thing, and this is what I kind of like, you know, we talk about this love triangle that has developed between Guts and Casca and Griffith. If Guts had learned that Griffith's crew was on the run, would he have immediately gone back so quickly? I don't think so, because Guts is so sure that Griffith has control of the situation, and he's so confident in Griffith's strength that he's like, oh no, Griffith's got this. He's fine. I'm just like a little pebble to him. He'll get back on his feet and be okay, even though we've clearly seen that is not the case. And so, but Guts knows that Casca is not Griffith, and Guts knows that Casca has been in vulnerable situations before. And so Guts is like, oh no, Casca, I gotta go save her. I gotta go help her, you know. And that's just because he's seen the duality. He's only seen Griffith in a place. And you could say that's sexist of Guts, but I don't think that's the case. I think that that is just from Guts' experience. He has only seen Griffith in a position of strength and power and control. But he's seen Casca in moments of vulnerability and weakness. So Guts, being the simple-minded, pragmatic person that he is like, well, I've only seen Griffith being on top of his game. He's probably got this. He's fine, even though we as the audience have seen that is not the case. And then Casca, because Guts has seen her in places of vulnerability and weakness, he's like, oh, well, she might actually need help. I should probably go help her. So I don't think it's sexist. I think it's kind of romantic in a way. And I think it's just Guts relying on what he knows. Because that's pretty much Guts in a nutshell. He's like, what do I know? What can I do in this moment that I have understanding of? Right? But we know Griffith is in a very bad place and has been in a very bad place mentally and physically for quite a while now. So the question is going to be, is Griffith going to welcome Guts back if they go to rescue him, or is he going to discard Guts? I feel like it's going to be the latter, because in episode 1, Griffith has a very, very bad impression of Griffith. And I feel like Guts has that bad impression of Griffith because of the actions he's going to take at the end of this season. Could be wrong. But I feel like Griffith is going to be very angry at Guts for leaving him, and he's going to blame Guts for everything that went wrong. And Guts is like, what did I do? You told me you didn't want, I heard you say you didn't want to be friends with people that, weren't, trying to be ambitious like you. So that's just what I wanted to do because I thought we were going to be friends. And it's going to be that miscommunication where Griffith's like, when did I say that? And Guts is going to be like, oh, at the Fountain of Charlotte. And Griffith's going to be like, what? That wasn't directed towards you, But I think it's going to be like the OP says, I think it's going to be, it's too late. Griffith's mind is going to be made up and he's going to be angry at Guts and wanting to get back at him. And then Guts is going to be like, what did I do? And then it's all going to go to hell in a handbasket. But who knows? Maybe that won't happen. But I feel like that's all going to be timed out with them rescuing Griffith the same time as the demons show up for this eclipse. It's just going to be chaos. I feel like the end of this season is going to be absolute chaos. And this was like the calm before the storm. And the end of this episode was the storm starting. Right? Or maybe there'll be a calm before the storm when they're deciding to go rescue Griffith. I don't know. We'll see, right? But, I don't feel like Griffith is going to be very as accepting of Guts because he's going to be like, you've been the torment of my mind for the last year. And now you show up and you think I'm not going to be mad about it. And Guts is going to be oblivious, being like, why you mad, bro? And I don't see it going well. I don't see it going well, right? Don't see it being a positive thing. So we get a lot of philosophical talk in this episode dealing with the opening that talks about, is destiny of mankind controlled by a transcendental being or by law? I don't know if it's either. Honestly, I don't know if it's either. Because this episode kind of plays around with that concept of destiny and fate and how we interpret our own fate and what we find as our purpose, right? So during the year, Guts has been living. He's been living with this swordsmith, which makes perfect sense for Guts because he's needed him to keep fixing his sword as he goes out and challenges seemingly randomly just to strengthen himself. I feel like there's a lot of Goku from Dragon Ball Z in Guts in terms of he just wants to fight. I feel like Goku is very kind of one-dimensional in terms of his fighting. He just fights people because he's strong and he wants to face the strongest. I feel like Guts is constantly just trying to improve himself and sharpen his skills, get stronger, so that he can, in some way, be ready to find whatever that purpose is supposed to be. But as we talk about in this, it's not so simple. So I like that we get some jousting. I like that we get some medieval stuff going on. It's been a while, a couple episodes since we've gotten some kind of fantasy elements like that. I like that. I like that we lean into the fantasy medieval aspects of the series. I also like that we go to these other kingdoms that are part of the country itself, but not like in constant battle. I feel like in this series, every time we've gone to another country, it's been someone we've been sparring against or waging war against. And you kind of haven't had the chance to sit back and be like, oh yeah, there are other countries who aren't constantly at battle with one another. They're just here having a good old time. And that's kind of what this one was. This Sultan-like king that's surprisingly very jovial and very chill. I liked that because most of the kings we've encountered in this series have either been batshit crazy or they've been incompetent or they've just been the worst. And here, this guy just seems fine. He's just like, oh yes, Valencia, our strongest fighter. We're just having this jousting match. And then Guts shows up and he's like, hey, I'm gonna fight him because he's the strongest. Let's go. And then I liked it. The king at the end of the day was like, won't you join us? And the look on Guts' face when he was like, no, absolutely not. Why would you think that? Again, Guts is kind of oblivious. And the king is like, okay, well, that's a shame to put such talent to waste. So yeah, the king talks about the idea of talent and use. What is the point of talent if you're not going to use it? And that's kind of a big theme in this episode. It's the idea of, why does the blacksmith do what he does? And it also kind of goes along this little cycle. And we see this in another series, Jujutsu Kaisen, that kind of comes up. So I feel like it's, again, maybe Gege is inspired by Berserk in some ways. Akutami is. But you have the idea of this cycle of having talent, having effort, and the effort showing improvement of said talent. And it's this big cycle, right? Because, and there has to be like effort. Here's the thing, there has to be, I'm going to replace improvement with passion. Because in order to, usually you have passion about something when you have talent, but you can't really hone that talent without effort, and the effort increases that passion. So it becomes this big cycle, right? And I think the blacksmith sort of embodies that. He's like, I don't understand exactly why I do the things that I do, but I've always done it. I've always put in the effort, and the effort's made me more talented. And because of that, I've felt more passion about it. And it just becomes this big repeating, recycled, cycle over and over again. And the blacksmith, it also ties to the idea of generational or genetic interest. He's like, all of my family have been blacksmiths. We've all been blacksmiths. We've all had a talent for it. We've all had a passion for it, and it's just gone through the generations over and over again. It's kind of like if you're a family of hairdressers. A lot of time people that do hair, they do hair, then their children do hair and makeup, and it kind of like it cycles, right? Now that's not to say that that's always the case, because it is not always the case. My parents were both really athletic and loved sports. I'm dead awful at them, but I do like sports anime, so maybe that's where it's come in at, right? But things that I'm talented in, like I love writing and drawing and literature, neither of my parents like those things. My grandpa liked them, so maybe it skips a generation. Maybe it's just embedded in my bones, and my parents just, didn't activate that. But I feel like there's a genetic, generational interest, and that can help foster a passion. Because, like, here's the thing. You have Erica, who she has been around blacksmithing her whole life because of her grandfather. And so her grandfather or father, I think she says grandpa. But she's been around it her whole life. So she's like, oh, I want to do it because it's fun. Like, she doesn't really know the application of it. She doesn't understand the usefulness of it, but she's been around it all the time and she finds it enjoyable. It's kind of like, if you grow up on a farm, typically you find farming interesting because that's what you're used to, and you either like it or you don't. And she kind of likes it. I would love Erica to become a blacksmith. That would be really cool. Would love that. I don't know if Godot and them are the blacksmiths from the first episode. I don't think that they are, now that I think about it. At the beginning, I was like, oh, are they, the blacksmith and the girl from the beginning? I don't think so. I don't think that they are. I think it's somebody different. But I think that the episode 1 kind of, the girl getting attacked and assaulted by the men could kind of represent Erica, and what she, grows up to become, and Guts kind of steps in because of that. And the blacksmith Guts sees at the beginning could maybe like tie back to Godot. I don't know. That's interesting. But yeah, that idea of genetic interest helping to foster that passion and talent for something, and it being this cycle. Now, we've talked about the idea that we don't know Guts' lineage, and Zod has a very keen interest in Guts, so there's a chance that Guts could be related to some kind of demon or demonic force. Would that tie possibly to Guts' destiny of always being on the battlefield and always carrying a sword and always getting involved in battles because of his genetics? We'll see. But there's kind of like, this idea that, destiny is ingrained in your body as you're born and you can't help it. That could be something as well that's talked about in this series even more. And we've just hinted at it with Erica and her grandfather Godot, with Guts and his lineage. I'm just saying that could be a very big possibility. We'll just have to wait and see. We'll just have to wait and see after this eclipse if Zod shows back up and starts giving some exposition to Guts, because that's very well the case. I did like the Valencia guy, like the way he was drawn. He seemed kind of like Pippin. He had a very like mellow and kind of like stoic look to him. He didn't look menacing or evil at all, right? He didn't give off like Boscone vibes. He just seemed like a chill big dude that was just really talented. I like that we just, like, the very first half of this episode were so chill and calm. And it's such a stark comparison to Griffith last episode, who was manic and just getting all up in Charlotte's business. And here Guts is just living his best life, being like, well, I'm just challenging people, so getting my sword skills sharpened, just having a gay old time, you know? But yeah. And then I think it speaks volumes for Guts's character that he does not like Guts from episode 1 and 2. Well, I mean, episode 1 is in the future, but Guts from episodes 2 and 3 was so like feral and violent, and he was just striking people down and trying to kill people and being a mercenary and escaping. And this Guts is so refreshing in how calm he is, in how he doesn't kill Valencia. He just like has a sword and he's like, hey, I just wanted to test my strength. Thanks, bro. Bye. Like, he's such a different person, but it doesn't feel forced. It feels so organic and natural that we've seen Guts come all this way and transition, and he seems so at peace and having an amazing time in this episode, which when you compare to Griffith moaning and groaning in a cave, it's like, oh well, my, how things have changed, right? But it just, you feel happy for Guts in this moment that he's kind of like found himself and he's so happy. Will say, Guts coming across Erica right at the beginning when he shows back up at Godot's house. Very Frankenstein vibes, very Mary Shelley, the monster and the little girl. Those vibes. I was waiting for him to be over. When she was over top of the waterfall, I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be like the well scene. I'm just glad that Godot and Erica were safe and that they didn't get like raided by bandits in this episode. I was like, I'm not ready to see that. That girl's sweet. Let her continue her life on. Not ready for that. And I'll be honest, when the guy showed up asking for swords, I honestly thought the guy was like gonna make a, here's what I thought was gonna happen. I thought that Griffith somehow became king during the time that Guts was gone, but Griffith's like, because he became king and because Guts left, he was so bitter and just became this bitter, haggard individual that was like, I don't care about anything anymore. Just destroy it all, burn it all. And so which could still happen, I felt like when that guy showed up asking for swords, he was going to make a decree being like, there's been a royal decree that Griffith is looking for Guts and that he's going to like kill all the bandits until he finds them. And it's like, whoa, this seems extreme. What? And that was going to be the case. And that I felt like Griffith was going to like decree some order that was going to end up killing Erica and Godot, and Gus was going to get mad about it and like go confront Griffith and be like, why did you do these things? I had a whole scenario planned out before we even got to the plot getting revealed. Had the whole scenario planned out the moment that guy showed up. And then when he was talking about Casca and them being on the run, I was like, oh, well, Casca probably like spoke up to Griffith or stood up to Griffith to defend Guts, and that caused them to have to leave. And I had a whole plot made out. And then the episode said, no, that's not it. But it could become it. Who knows? Who knows? Once we go to rescue Griffith, it's going to be interesting to see how Griffith reacts and what we end up getting. But yeah, so talking about Guts, I love that Guts like, why did you become a swordsmith? And Godot's like, it's just always been part of me. But he's like, I like that the episode called Sparks relates to this idea of seeing sparks and sparks being tied to life and liveliness. And it's tied to that passion and purpose. For Godot, he doesn't really know why he swings the blade. It's just something that's always come natural to him, and he's always found like that he enjoys it. But when he sees the sparks from the sword getting slapped by the mallet, he says it feels like he comes alive. Like in that moment, that is his purpose. That connects him to his purpose, and that's why he ends up doing it. And I like that Guts realizes that his sword is not his dream. It's just a part of him. It's just an extension of himself. But it's going to be, what do I do with the sword that will define his dream and define his purpose? Because Guts has always been sitting on that rooftop holding that sword up being like, is this part of me? Is this my dream? Is my dream being the sword for someone else? And it's not. That's what he finds out. He's like, no, the sword, me using the sword to help someone else is not necessarily my dream. My dream is not to be a lackey of Griffith, is what he comes to realize without directly saying it. But instead, he keeps sharpening the sword because it's part of him. It's something that he loves, like the blacksmith. But it's like, well, what do I do with the sword? And then he decides, he's like, I'm using it for myself. And whatever I deem to do with the sword is tied to my dream. So I think that by the end of this season, or by where we catch up at the beginning, it's going to be, I mean, Guts has pretty much decided that his dream is tied to him using the sword how he sees fit. And he's doing it for himself. It's like Scott Pilgrim, you know, it's the power of self-love. He's doing it for him, not for anyone else. But I feel in that same vein, Guts is now deciding, I'm going to use this sword to protect Casca. Or I'm going to use this sword to protect Griffith. Not to do what Griffith or Casca want me to do, but to do what I want to do. And if that includes protecting them, then so be it. And that the sparks of him colliding that blade with other blades to protect people he cares about or protect things he cares about is going to be what gives him life. Maybe. That's what seems to be like the rough draft. I feel like Guts' constant dream and purpose is like a rough draft of a paper getting constantly revised, which as an English teacher I appreciate. And I feel like this is the revision that Guts has come to at this point. But it's so philosophical. It's so poetic. It's philosophical. It's beautiful. I really appreciated Guts just kind of reasoning with himself because, again, when I started this series, I thought Guts was going to be a very straightforward kind of just bro character that would be very simple-minded. And he's very pragmatic. He's very realistic and is not, you know, very romantic or intuitive in that regard. But he's not dumb. He thinks about things. He can be very philosophical about things. But he's also very straightforward, right? Maybe simple isn't the way to say it. He's very straightforward and pragmatic. Just functional, right? But also, glad that, you know what, Mira? Keep giving us the man service. I feel like a woman in her 30s can appreciate Guts standing there at the bottom of the waterfall. I was like, you just go for it, man. And the way that his training montages have gotten more elaborate, like it's not just, I love that Erica was sleeping under the tree while he was just practicing the sword swinging over and over again because stereotypical Guts. But like him using the tree trunks back and forth like as a way to practice his maneuverability and being able to dodge and his agility. Him swinging through tree trunks with that damn sword, and that blacksmith's like, son of a bitch, I keep fixing this sword. You know, I feel like that is so good to see like those little improvements as we go. I like that the series gives justification to why Guts is so strong. It's that constant work, constant effort, consistency that keeps him getting stronger and stronger, and it's really great. Yay. Good for Guts. Good for Guts indeed, right? I just love it. I love it. And we also see through the course of this episode, him like, you know, slowly improve over time, right? And him just asking, I love the expressions. I love the conversation with Godot and Guts. Like, I just love how soft he is around Erica. It's so sweet. And then him deciding to leave her and Godot being like, good, get away from my kid. I'm joking. But yeah, I thought that was so good. And then as he's leaving, as he's getting ready to go, that's when the guy shows up asking for swords to track down the bandits. And we find out the Band of the Hawk. So man, what I'm anticipating next episode is I hope that Guts is able to help them defeat the bandits and escape and kind of I feel like Guts just instantly being there is going to boost morale among the men. Because they're like, oh my God, we could have a chance to save Griffith now that Guts has shown back up. But I have a feeling Judo and Casca are going to be like, you leaving caused a lot of problems. Like the Band of the Hawk, we went from being, I feel like Corcus is going to be very bitter. Because Corcus is going to be like, we were about to be knighted. I had a route to Easy Street and you leaving screwed everything up. And it's like, oh, okay. And I feel like they're going to kind of give Guts a what for, being like, you leaving has caused a lot of problems for us. Like, we were about to be knighted. I'm like, why couldn't you have waited 2 days until we got knighted to leave? Why did you have to leave then and there? Just because now all these problems have been caused, right? And now of course, I'm sure as soon as Guts realizes that Griffith has been, imprisoned, he's going to go after him to try to rescue him. I feel like that's coming down the pipe, right? And what's interesting is the moment that one guy said that Casca was leading the band on the run, Guts is like, I gotta go rescue my lady. And the question is going to be, is Griffith going to be accepting of them rescuing him, or is he going to be pissed off? I'm going to say pissed off, and then the question's going to be then, if they rescue Griffith, and when they rescue Griffith, is Griffith going to be like, okay, thanks for rescuing me, now let's kill the kingdom and take over? Is he going to try to use Guts to take over the kingdom after he's rescued, or is he going to cut and run? He's not going to cut and run. He wants that crown. That's what he's been building up towards. So is he going to slaughter the king and marry Charlotte and be like, all right, I'm king now. By birthright, I've married Charlotte. We're doing this. And I have a feeling that Guts is going to be used by Griffith, and Guts is going to be like, but I went off so that we could become equals and become friends. And I have a very bad suspicion that Griffith, in a moment of him being angry at Guts and wanting that crown so badly, is going to come out and say, I was never going to be your friend. I was only going to use you for my own purposes. And Guts is going to be like, but I thought we were bro friends. And Griffith's going to be like, no. I was just using you all along. Are you that simple? I just see that coming, but this series has surprised me at every single turn. It has surprised me at every single corner with what it's been doing in the series. So what can we do, right? But yeah, I love this episode. It was so quiet and calm. Again, Judo being the friend to Casca and watching over her. Pippin and Rickard. Whoever hurt Rickard, shame on you. Breaking Rickard's arm or hurting it. How dare. How dare. And then, of course, the bandits show up. And that moment that Casca, thank goodness she got out of the tent before it lit on fire. That moment that Guts shows up and is just standing above her being like, get up, Captain. Love it. Peak romance. So yeah, I have a feeling everything's going to come to a head now. Next episode, they got to take care of the soldiers hunting them, come up with a game plan for how they're going to go and rescue Griffith, figure out how they're going to do that. I don't think it's going to go well. I don't foresee it going well at all. They're going to probably give Guts a what to next episode. He's going to be like, I've been living my best life. What have you guys been up to? But I think the big takeaway from this episode, aside from that it's been a year and things have been happening, I think the big takeaway is Guts realizing that his sword is not necessarily, it's not the sword itself that is the dream. The dream is not being a sword for someone else. The dream is having his own sword that serves him, and he gets to do whatever he wants with it. And if he decides to help Griffith or decides to help Casca, that's his prerogative. He's in control of his destiny, seemingly. And that it's his, he's in control of his own fate. Which is kind of like staring in the face of the opening every single episode that tells us that's not the case. So I feel like Guts is having this really inspirational, wonderful moment about his self-actualization of who he is. And I feel like the rest of the series is going to test that and be like, well, are you in control, Guts? Or is this like that little withered hand said, and it's going to be, and the withered hand is in control of everything? I feel like there's all these things at work and at play here, and it's just figuring out Guts is going to be tested this entire story. That's the point, right? Of testing what he's determining about himself. But I don't think Griffith's going to be happy when they show up. I get that feeling. Griffith is a little bit of a diva. I feel like he's going to be super pissed when they show up, and he's going to be like, I rotted in this dungeon for a year while you are off having fun. And he's going to just use them all. But who knows? Who knows? So I loved this episode a lot. I'm super excited to see what we get from it in the episodes to come. I'm super excited to know what you all think down below all of this. I'm excited to hear your comments about the philosophical discussion between Godot, between Guts, and to feel like how we are going to interpret that for future episodes. But yeah, we are at 21, 22, 23, 24, 25. We're at the 5 episode mark. Lots can happen in 5 episodes, right? Lots can happen. So I'm just excited for Guts and Casca to be back together again. Those two Bakas need to talk. They need to talk. She needs to admit that she likes Guts. Let's get that on the table. Judo needs to say something about it because it was left unsaid. They need to talk about how much Griffith loved Guts, and Guts being like, I didn't know I was loved this much. It's like, ugh, Baka. So we need that happening ASAP. And I need it to happen next episode. And I don't know if I'm going to wait before I can watch episode 21. So there's that. But I'm curious to know your comments down below and what you all thought of this episode. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back very soon with more Berserk. Bye. Y'all, I'm so ready to talk about this.